still getting a handle on. The astrologists are all saying that March and April are going to be huge. They're going to be paradigm changing. This is a huge year for AI. And I'm sure Craig will agree with me and everyone in the audience who saw this new Project Stargate, a $500 billion project for AI, could be a huge game changer. So life as we know it is going to be changing. So I'm just going to go ahead and roll the intro. I have just the proper amount of material, a little less actually than usual for the 1 hour Into the Outer Realms, because I want to give Craig room to speak. So let's roll the intro and get going, shall we? A lot to talk about tonight.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
Sorry, I'm just sick of it. I'm just thinking that that intro is going to have new and different meaning. I mean, we are at the brink, I think, of big changes. So I'm going to bring on so happy to have him with me tonight. It seems like we're spending a lot of time together to start off the new year, and I'm thrilled. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Hey, welcome everybody. I know it feels back-to-back Thursdays. They're actually going to be back-to-back.
Yeah, and we've been doing that, and that's really cool. And so let's get the weather out of the way, man. It was literally -12 when we woke up yesterday morning. And I know my friends in North Carolina on the Crystal Coast got 6 inches of snow. Very unusual. How far what was your weather?
We got 9, almost some places got almost 9 inches in the Panhandle of Florida, and it got quite a bit. It's I think there was flurries as far down as Gainesville. So it's tonight we're supposed to have a low of 35. So in Florida terms, it's Armageddon. We're freak it out.
That is chilly.
But compared to you guys, we're tropical.
How far? It's like, yeah, well, I said to Tanya after the negative degrees and today was 20 something, the 30s that we're finally getting back into next week is going to feel like a heat wave.
Yeah.
Wow,
your experience. Yeah. And you were talking like in the intro talk. Yeah. I've always wanted to see UFOs. I've always wanted to do that stuff. The closest thing to an experience I had was last Sunday which we talked about.
Yeah.
Where I finally had my first ever paranormal experience that I could actually say was documented, that there was actually physical evidence that can't be debunked. I went through and did the miniature investigation right there. We checked out everything. I even showed Joey the video, and and they said you can clearly see there's paranormal activity, and that was my first one.
Ron says -30. I want to get back to that, Craig, but Ron says -30 in Minnesota. I experienced -30 several years ago in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. I was there with a collaborator for a business meeting. We went to see a play. We went to see Chekhov's The Seagull. I stepped outside to call Tanya at intermission. It was so cold, I couldn't speak. Oh, nice. Look at that there.
That's it. For the people that sit next to it. Yeah. That's
looking
that's
good. I literally couldn't speak. I felt like my brain was freezing.
Oh, I know.
That is
Negative 23 is the coldest I've been, so I can only imagine what negative 30 is like.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. So, and we went out to see a play because that's what Minnesotans do. It's like, oh well, it's -30. We're going to the theater. So anyhow, all right. So I want to move through this pretty quickly. I'm really looking forward to Craig, your thoughts on some of these things specifically. I mean, all of it, but we are it feels like we have gotten into a rocket and hit like hyperdrive in all the sectors of what's going on. Everything's moving so quickly. So I want to start with the drone controversy, whatever you want to call it. More and more information is coming out about the drone controversy. The very last thing I have in my notes is that Trump, on his first day in office, Monday night, asked his chief of staff to look into it. He's supposed to give us a report. He was talking about that leading up when he was doing his daily press conferences at Mar-a-Lago. We do not have any information from the White House yet about what these are, but more and more information is coming out. Very, very interesting. But what I want to start with, Craig, did you watch the two big hearings, the one with Grush and Fravor and Graves, and then the one just last November with Gallaudet and Elizondo and Michael Schellenberger?
Yeah, I watched. It wasn't like from start to finish. I watched quite a bit of it. And kind of my biggest take has always been my gut was always telling me that it's like one of those things where it's like watching videos when they say like, "Hey, I'm going to show you these tricks to how you're doing this thing," and then they never actually tell you. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm going to disclose this thing, and it always just feels like they're just enough, but they're not ever going to actually tell you what it is. It's kind of like those sci-fi. You're always like, there's a monster, but you never can figure out what the monster is. It's like M. Night Shyamalan. It's always off in the distance. You never know what it is. And that's what I felt like with a lot of these disclosure ones, is that it was like, I'm going to tell all. It's just enough Curse of Oak Island to keep you coming back for season 2, season 3. It's
Yeah, and some of that is because of the security clearances, the SCIFs, the USAPs, the the acronyms that I've been educating the audience on. This is part 4 of this disclosure. I'm learning a little better to read between the lines. And I think there's an example of that tonight, but we'll see. So in late October of last year, it was revealed that there were multiple federal investigations into somewhere around 600 mothership UAPs at U.S. military sites going back to 2022. Now, those of us in the know who have been studying this stuff for a really, really long time know, and we know because we've spoken to military people who say these things are around. They shut off nuclear submarines. They shut down military missile silos, NORAD, other places in Montana, Wyoming, and they've been doing it for a really, really long time. So again, it's interesting that the government is copping to this stuff a little more and talking about these drone swarms, which is coming up, where you see 17 to 20 to 50 of these things at a time. And NORAD, right, which I just mentioned, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, who basically oversees our missile program domestically, confirmed that this is happening. And, Craig, it's a good way, looking at all of this stuff, it's a good way to up the defense budget. Mm-hmm. They're swarming our military bases. We don't know what they are. They're swarming our ships. They're shutting down our equipment. They're frightening our fighter pilots. We need more money. We need more money. So,
it falls right into the Project Bluebeam thing, too, where that's one of those. That's one of the theories that's thrown out there, is that this is kind of like a test to see what people reaction. Mm-hmm. But I kind of fall into the two things where there's like two scary options here. We don't know what they are. and we can't stop them, and that's a freaky option. The other one is we do know what they are, they're ours, and they're looking for something, which is also a scary option, because then it's like, what are they searching for? Either one revolves in us not knowing the answer, and rumors and thoughts and everything just goes crazy, and then just sends people into a frenzy anyway, which they're supposedly not wanting to do. But like you said, there's no better way to force people to support an action than to have a major crisis, a la 9/11 Patriot Act. Nobody would have gone for it. Yeah, the same way with like this. If you got drones flying all over New Jersey, people in New Jersey are freaking out. Something must be done. And swoops in. Well, here, if we do this, we can do it. Fine, do it. I sign on. And that's all. And that falls right into a little bit like what Grush and Elizondo were saying. We're saying in some of their testimony is just where they're. This is by design.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. That's the two things. I mean, that's part for me. It's just where it's kind of I've fallen into those two scary options. It's we don't know what it is, or we do, and they just don't want to tell us.
I think, and probably no surprise to you or the audience, I think it's multiple things. It always seems to be multiple things, and I'll throw out some what of these things are tonight. Now, one of the guys who's heading up this whole thing with the drones, pretty serious fella, General Glenn Van Herk, who's the commander of U.S. Northern Command and of NORAD. He was the one who led the mission to take down those Chinese weather balloons that kind of lazily made its way all the way across the United States a couple of years ago, which you and I reported on February 2023. Yeah. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. Not a lot came out of this one, but some interesting things did. So on November 13th, the House Oversight and Accountability Joint Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Government Innovation had their hearing on UAPs. Nancy Mace was the chairwoman of this. And they opened it up by going back to something that I told you folks about in part 3, the SALT conference last year, where Army Colonel Carl Nell and said some very, very provocative things. So we have some very, very high level people saying some very, very provocative things. I think, Craig, having studied this stuff and having a whole bookshelf full of books and talking to experiences and insiders and all, these revelations are different than ever before in both quantity and quality. So here's what he said. And they opened up with this at this hearing. This was May 2024 SALT conference. NHI exists. Folks, NHI is what they're calling EBEs, what they used to call ETs, non-human intelligences. I kind of really like that. NHI exists. NHI has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new. It has been ongoing. Unelected people in the government are aware of that. Mr. Ansel, what is your position on the existence of NHI?
I think I can go for it. I said it's okay. Yeah. I don't know. For me it's I don't know. I'm always the eternal skeptic, as same way as optimist. At the same time, I am quite the study here, people. I want to see proof. At the same time, I'm always looking like, okay, what can't it be? But more and more things like I get on, it's just I really feel like it. These things, there's something to it. I mean, there's definitely correlation. There's too many things that kind of keep overlapping for it to be completely made up. And so I'm kicking and screaming, but Joey's bringing me along.
Oh man, I'm taking responsibility for a lot of people, but as you know, I'm an experiencer, and we had some so I'm going to save all that though. So we got to take to task again, and so many people are, and rightfully so, because so much is coming out. The All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARROW, which was the successor to ATIP, but with 2 or 3 other acronyms squashed in the middle because they like to play this game. Craig, and you and I have talked about that a lot with the defense contractors. You change the name a lot, it's much harder to do FOIA. It's much harder to track them, account for them if they're changing names all the time and owners and locations and all. So Sean Kirkpatrick did his job for several years, which is to say there's absolutely nothing to see. They criticized him also at the top of this congressional hearing. So the one thing that I will say for this group, Mace, Getz was part of it, but Luna, Burchett, especially, I talk about Burchett all the time. He's a little bit of a hero of mine. I don't really have heroes very much. Have been calling these guys out by saying there's no proof, because they're going, you know what, you do have proof, because we know the people who gave you proof, and now we're hearing from the people who gave them the proof and saying, no, they have it, they have video, they have pictures, they interviewed me for 3 hours. So it's absurd for them to say that. The other really big piece that came out, and I don't know if any of us are being surveilled. Apparently pretty soon we're all going to be surveilled. There's certainly a file on me. We know that after what happened with me with that college teaching job. But Michael Schellenberger's report on Immaculate Constellation. So Immaculate Constellation is a USAP. It is an unacknowledged special access program. And a copy of the report on Immaculate Constellation, which is a database. It's a locked off database containing all of this data, the footage, the interviews, the tapes, the audio, the measurements, the radar, is all supposedly in this Immaculate Constellation, was entered into the congressional record, and then it was made available on Nancy Mace's website. I have a copy of it. I've referred to it before. Go to Nancy Mace's congressional website, or just do a search for Immaculate Constellation. I really don't think you're going to be put on a surveillance list at this time. Too many people are talking about it. And just compare it to what's coming out, to what whistleblowers are saying, and say, oh, that's that report. Oh, that's that piece of it. Oh, that sounds exactly like that. People that I've had on the show, that Craig's had on the show, who have witnessed these things.
That's correct,
so I invite you all to do that. What's that, bro?
No, I said Ron's correct. As long as we go allegedly, you won't be put on the list.
Oh, yeah. No, it's
like,
it's a real it's a real thing. We have it. It's in the congressional record, and they can't put out. Yeah. They also referenced the July 2023 hearing with Fravor, Graves, and Grush, of course, because this is all part of a continuum. And there also have been a number of other classified hearings. So, Craig, that's exactly what you were talking about. They're teasing us because they go, oh, I have to be in the SCIF. I have to be in the special compartmentalized, situation because of security clearances. And
and that's where, like, with
security.
Lou Elizondo, because he talked about this in that 2017, so he talked about this, and that I was surprised. I was just getting to bring up, I had that in my notes, so I was like, oh, I'm doing good. He just talked about it. So it's, that was one of the programs, because this is, and I was wondering if this isn't going to end up being like a Project Blue Book. Like, this is going to become the public record, and then, like what we just talked about a couple minutes ago, it's already under a new program now. There's already a new name that we just don't know about, because this one is still technically unacknowledged. They have, it's nothing official, like they've officially acknowledged this is here. So this is like Project Blue Book. A lot of people knew about it. They didn't really talk about it, but that was because everything was now like the diversion program. This is now what's caught everybody's attention. So now we're putting in this other folder. So Joey and Craig are going to keep throwing FOIA requests at Immaculate Constellation. We're going to keep going here. Yeah. They're no longer storing anything under this.
Right.
All the new stuff has been decompartmentalized. It's been compartmentalized. And so it's been put into stuff. And so it's being broken apart. And so it'll be interesting to see where this goes.
No question. And Schellenberger had a telegraph. He had to take a copy and send it to the Pentagon of his thing before it broke. I'm sure they knew. Word got around. So exactly right. But we do have the information, which is cool, about the F-22 Raptor and what happened that I'll get to. So what's different from Grudge, Bluebird, Blue Book is that the high-level people were all either silent or they were complicit. Now we're having people who are actually coming forward. the whistleblowers, and they're all sort of paying a price, and they're all telling very scary stories. So we'll get to that. So if you're playing the home game, I'll give you some names of the people, the Congress people. You may recognize some names. It could be from your states. Burleson, Garcia, Moskowitz. Moskowitz is the only vocal Democrat on these things. Blocking disclosure, oddly enough, really seems to be a heavy blue team thing. But Moskowitz is very vocal. Grothman, Timmons, Luna, Burchett, Boebert, who was the only clown at the entire thing. Everybody else was totally serious, and Boebert had to be a clown. So I gotta say that. Higgins, Frost, Ogles. Ogles is a very, very serious dude. I try to read people, Craig, being a writer, being an actor, being a student of people, an investigator, a field investigator. And this Ogles does not look like the kind of guy who's going to talk about bullshitty things.
Yeah. Yeah,
He's just a serious dude. Biggs, they all ask questions during the hearings. They all get like 5 minutes to ask their questions, get the answers. That's typically, I'm learning a lot about how these hearings work. So then they bring up the drones again, and they talk about them swarming over Langley Air Force Base, very important base on the East Coast, of course, over a period of 2 weeks in December 2023. They were 3,000 feet in the air. They were 20 feet long, and they went 100 miles an hour. This seems like a little hint of some of the drones that some people are reporting.
Yeah.
Over Jersey.
One thing too, kind of like with the drones, and I was like, because if you go from, if you go Renaissance paintings and everything, a lot of them, they show like a spherical, orb type shape.
Mm-hmm.
One, because obviously they didn't have a reference of a plane or anything to do like the thing. They just kind of always did it like a ball of fire, with somebody in it. But through time, I was going to pose a question in the chat while you were talking, but I couldn't figure out a way to word it the best. Why do you think there's like a periodic change where the sightings seem to like, you went from orbs, and all of a sudden all we see is saucers? Because like the 40s and 50s, everything was a saucer shape.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was like your classic movie thing. But then they started switching. We get into the 70s and 80s, everything's triangles. We start seeing the triangle shapes and stuff. But now we seem to be going, you don't seem to hear a lot about the triangle shaped craft as much as, like, mostly we're back to it's orbs, spherical. And you don't get the classic like 40, 50 UFO saucers anymore.
Right.
Is it different visitors? Is it different technology? What, that's what
it's multiple things, and I've studied this pretty closely for a really long time. It's cultural. So when you go all the way back, there were fireballs in the sky, then they were, and then we got into the 60s, it got into the saucers. It's sort of cultural. It matches, like, we see what we can handle. Why do so many people, when their spirit guides come, are they indigenous? That makes sense, because we all know culturally that shaman, people such as that, holy people, that's what they do. So they come in the guise that just like the owls are not what they seem. When I had my experience in 2005, and 2009, I saw that weird deer thing. Other people have seen that too. It clearly, based on the eyes and all, and I don't have it to show you guys right now, and I don't want to tear it off my wall here. It clearly was not a deer, and other people have reported this too. So that's part of it. They come in the guise that we can handle. I was really excited 5 years ago when they stopped calling them UFOs and they started calling them UAPs. And I've said this before, unidentified anomalous phenomena, or aerial phenomena. And because these light worms, because these orbs, I have seen these orbs. And I will get to that at the perfect time. Tanya and I have also called in these orbs. So, Craig, I think it's part cultural. Yeah, I think that there are different species. I think people have cataloged up to 70 different species that have visited or made contact. Some people say it's over 200. I tend to go with the 70 something different species. Also, too, I think sometimes they mimic our technology. So triangles were a really big thing when we were first doing our really, really high-tech surveillance planes that were coming out of Skunk Works and all. So I think that that's part of it. I think that's part of it as well. So Christopher Mellon, who I've been following really closely, he came up with Lou Elizondo. These guys have really passed my skepticism test. I was really not big on these guys 4 years ago, and they really just keep on passing the test. He's the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence under Clinton and Bush. So, again, a very accomplished, high-level person that was in both of those regimes. And he says that Langley was targeted even prior to that. I want to mention Moskowitz again being the only real vocal Democrat. He and Burchett are working on the bipartisan UAP Transparency Act. They're really trying to get protections for whistleblowers because you're going to hear, you heard things about Grush. I told you things about Grush in part 3 of this. It's kind of what they did to Bob Lazar going all the way back to the 80s. They will try to destroy these people's lives, and they will out them if they piss them off, and they will tell you personal things about their lives, like what Grush has struggled with his PTSD, with his suicidal ideations, with his alcoholism is really none of our business.
Yeah, because for me, if just like being outside of like this community for coming into it, Bob Lazar was always the one that I believed the most, because he's the one that actually you could see a pattern of actually being prosecuted and them coming after. Because like Lou Elizondo, Bob Lazar can't go within 50 feet of the Pentagon, let alone walk inside the Pentagon. I'm like I said, but supposedly Lou Elizondo is saying all the stuff, revealing all these things, and yet he's able to walk right back into the Pentagon and go meet with these people. That's always been the biggest thing that's held me back from believing that he's truly, a whistleblower. I feel like he's more like he's trying to do something, but at the same time, it's just like he knows just how far he can go. He can say stuff, but that's why I've always that's always been the thing. Because like Bob Lazar, I mean, he is, he was attacked. I mean, it's like his life was turned upside down.
Yeah, they tried to scrub him. So if it wasn't for a directory that somehow they missed, or an article because he liked to race rocket cars and it happened to say who he worked for at the time, an old newspaper article, plus some of the things that he had talked about, the hand scanner, a heavy element that didn't exist that was then discovered. What's been really cool is over the past 40 years since Bob Lazar came out, some of these things have come to life as being very real. Like they actually found one of the hand scanners that he was talking about.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know about that part.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. So I gotta give, that was Jeremy Corbell, who I really, really, really don't like. So King says here, I remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of whistleblowers were coming out. That's because the Clintons made a big push to know. Lawrence Rockefeller got involved. A lot of people got involved, and they got nowhere. They got absolutely nowhere. People got threatened. I think some people DIED'd. And the whole thing was brought down, and the Air Force came out and said, no, what they really found in the desert after Roswell were not EBEs. They were actually crash test dummies. And somebody said, well, sir, did you know that crash test dummies didn't even come out until 1952? And he said, oh, well, people get confused about dates. That was the answer of the U.S. Air Force colonel who gave the crappy report. So let's keep going, or else we're not going to get through all this stuff. Grothman asked for data going 15 years back. I don't know if that's going to happen any more than Trump signed an executive order wanting the JFK, RFK, MLK files released. And they'll probably come back heavily redacted. They probably won't tell us anything we don't know. And it all depends on how many cabinet people he gets put in the right place. But that might have actually been premature, because we've seen Clinton, we've seen Carter, we've seen other presidents say, I'm going to find out what's going on here. JFK wanted to talk about more of what was going on. It didn't go well for any of these people. So, I'm having a hard time keeping up here with everything. Egg-shaped UFO. Yeah. So you're talking about Lonnie Zamora in the
New Mexico, the
desert,
police officer.
Socorro,
Yep.
New Mexico. Yeah, who was completely discredited. But that's what I was thinking about with the egg-shaped UFO myself. And Wallace Wagner, Craig. That's what set him on his path. He's on. I think he's been on my show 3 times. He was on your show.
Yeah, it was at least 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what he saw, that exact thing. So that kind of perks up the eyes when you see those kinds of things. Mace mentions Immaculate Constellation. Luna says anyone who mentions it goes on an intelligence community surveillance list. Like I said, I really don't think that's happening. So here are the witnesses, and here's what they said. Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet. Tim Gallaudet was the senior meteorologist in the United States Navy. He's sticking with this. He's coming forward more and more. Michael Schellenberger, journalist who broke the Immaculate Constellation story. Of course, Lou Elizondo, and a guy named Michael Gold. I didn't even put him in the banner. He was there just to represent NASA. He said virtually nothing. NASA continues to be a huge disappointment. No surprise, founded by a confirmed Nazi. What do you expect from NASA? They're full of crap. He was part of the independent study team that said they found nothing. Why he was there, some kind of deal got struck. Somebody wanted NASA there. It was a total waste of time. So Gallaudet, in his prepared remarks, the Rear Admiral says that he found out that UAPs were real in 2015. So this is going back a decade now. He received an email while he was the Navy's chief meteorologist regarding the near-air collisions after the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Fast group encountered the Go Fast in 2016. When that all broke after the ATIP and during the lockdown, when the Pentagon said, yeah, these videos are real. So, Craig, that was 2016, 2017. We're 8 years into this now. We're 8 years into a new level of this kind of disclosure. So it's been somewhat slow going. So anyway, he gets this email from the commander of fleet forces about, does anybody know what the hell this is? Try and help us out. There were some problems with the email security clearances. People were on the list who should not have been receiving the email. It was taken down and it was never mentioned again. Never mentioned again. But here's the head of commander of fleet forces. Unless that's a giant false flag, dude, where they're feeding information to see who's going to leak it. That's pretty impressive.
Oh yeah. No, because that's one of those things. I mean, do you think it had anything to do with this? And it's not political people, but it had anything to do with Trump being elected? Because that was Trump comes in,
right?
And he's wanting to release stuff, just kind of like what he's. It's not related to this show, but supposedly next week we're going to get the JFK information.
Yeah,
he's authorized that to come out. So we'll see. We'll see if that's just a carrot, another carrot. And we're just going to get another redacted,
that's what
pile of documents. But because it seems like it was the same thing, like you said, the Clinton administration, he was kind of like, hey, because I think he was interested in this stuff too. It's like he wanted, some, and I don't know if it was the same thing, like this is something Trump was really into, or if it was just something like, this is, with all the chaos, this is going to be just kind of like, this is going to be like flack. I could throw this out there and it's going to take some people to go that they're going to chase that way. And then they're going to forget about what they were doing. Because it seemed like just right at the same time, it's like he comes in, it's just like, boom, this is released. And then it just kind of spurned this whole new, like you said, for the last 8 years, where it was like new bits and people are like, oh my God, we finally got something after, after decades of trying to get something.
He doesn't seem that interested. I think it's more about sticking it to the deep state, being the guy who releases this stuff. Everything with Trump is ego driven. Just at the end of the day, it's ego driven. He was in the right place at the right time with the right brand. The DNC had screwed things up beyond all freaking hope or recognition. That's what I always say about people like Donald Trump, people about Howard Stern, other people who are super provocative and are disruptors. It's not them. It's the times and it's the situation and it's the ability to be in the right place at the right time with the right message, or to push yourself into that message and be willing to play it.
I would agree, because if you take it, like if you put Howard Stern nowadays, it wouldn't work. He wouldn't have the same pull.
No.
because one, we're all desensitized because of Howard Stern and stuff. But yeah, if you took like the Rush Limbaugh, Howard Stern, these type of people, it's like it wouldn't stick out as much. Like you said, it was the right time. It was the right time. They hit, and they just became a phenomenon. And that's I don't know. That's one of those things. I like, especially with like the disclosure. It seems, because and we talked about this too. It's just like why now? What was the reason? Like why now?
Well,
and
that's
and then what you're talking about is I think you hit it in the beginning of the show when you said things are really ramping up.
Yeah.
A topic we'll be bringing up probably in our show together, along with this thing we're going to get here, is we could see, and it was described this way in a show I was listening to, that if this thing does come to pass, this would be the equivalent of going from the Stone Age to where we are now. Close to 5,000 years of evolution in less than a year and 2 years, which, I mean, just picture where we're at now. This is like a 5,000 year jump being brought to us right now. This is how drastically we could see potentially in the next year our lives being changed.
Well, I absolutely think so. So, Craig, I said this 2 weeks ago. I think this is going to be a super exciting year for you and I, because there's so much to talk about all the time. But we've sort of, what have we done? 54 episodes, I think. So in 70, 80 hours of material, we've laid this big tapestry, and everything we've talked about is kind of coming true. All these players are now, they're moving it to the next level. So there's some really interesting books. Robert Anton Wilson wrote the Comic Trigger series. He also wrote the Illuminati series, Frodiger's Cat. They're great books. But Wilson in the 1980s was talking about, he was like a super metaphysical sort of Hunter S. Thompson. It was interesting, but he was talking about the singularity. So it takes 1,000,000 years for knowledge to double. Then it takes 500,000 years. Then it takes 250,000 years. Then it takes 100,000 years. Then it takes 50,000 years. We've gotten to the point where in the past 100 years, we've doubled all of the prior information of human existence. The theory is that it will continue to happen so fast every year, every 6 months, every month, till basically information will double every second, and it'll hit what's called the singularity. I think AI is going to be a huge piece of that. And we do seem to be heading that way. So
because they're working on AGI, which for anybody that doesn't know what that is, it's artificial general intelligence. That's what the goal is right now. But what we're talking about, and they think that we're going to have the breakthrough, and this is where it could either be scary or great. And this is where it kind of falls into like the disclosure is, I think part of what we're seeing is, whether it's interdimensional from another planet, is we're seeing some version of a super intelligence. And that's actually what they're working on. Is if we hit an artificial super intelligence, then this is going to be smarter than us. And that's where it could either be incredibly beneficial to society, or it will be the end of us. Because at that point, does AI view us as insignificant altogether? And that's where this precipice, and that's where it's kind of like the spherical things, which they don't seem to have any biological in them. So is this something that's an AI control, an artificial intelligence in these craft? And that's where I think is it just a normal drone that's being operated by somebody, or is this a super intelligence where it's it's completely autonomous, doing its own thing?
Let me get to that information. I think we're gonna have to shelve some of these topics for tonight because we're 40 minutes into this, and that's
one of the things I'm wondering, because like everybody's seeing spheres, and obviously it can't be a biological craft, and that's what because it's like that one I just saw. I don't know if I apologize. I don't know where the location, but it was undulating. It was changing shape. It wasn't just solid. It was changing shape. So obviously there can't be an occupant in that. In that object. So it has to be something more of an intelligent, for lack of better things, object that's floating.
Yep. Okay. So I really got to try to get through this.
Yeah, go for it.
It's what I promised tonight is to get through this.
I know.
Where are we at here? So Chris Mellon again told Tim Gallaudet that satellite imagery of a disk is being withheld from Congress. Elizondo says the U.S. has UAP tech. I think we know all that. This is an interesting thing, Craig. This is how it operates, and this hasn't changed going back from the 50s and 60s. The Pentagon has a PSYOPs officer in the Public Affairs Office who is the sole point of contact for citizen and media inquiries about UAPs. And part of his role is to flood the field with disinformation. That goes all the way back to Richard Doty. That goes back to Philip Klass. It goes back to all these guys discrediting people, almost driving one guy crazy, insane, with disinformation. It's why the UAP field is so messed up, because it's so easy to infiltrate and feed false information in. That's why we have to watch all these people really carefully. I am lowest on the credibility of Stephen Greer than I have ever been. He came in on all this drone thing. He's making, if you go back and you watch Stephen Greer the last 2 or 3 years, it's like in 6 months, this is going to happen. In 8 months, this is going to happen. In 3 weeks, this is going to happen. And nothing's happening on the level that he's talking about. And yet people are still putting him on their podcasts.
Because he feels like one of those people where it's just you throw out something that just sounds like it's got some, specifics to it, but it's just general enough to where you can be like, like I'd say, something major is going to happen in California, and it could be anything. You could have a massive, car accident. You could have a small earthquake in Northern California. You could have the wildfires. You could have a bridge collapse, and you'd be like, "See, I said something was going to happen." Yeah, and you're like, but it was, I mean, it's pretty easy. Something's going to happen in the U.S. tomorrow, people. I want acknowledgement that I predicted it.
He's always been sketchy, claiming to have met with all these people and being this guy's advisor. I read his memoirs. He claims to be in telepathic contact with Clinton, that his family members were killed with psionic weapons that gave them cancer. That all could kind of be, but if one guy has everything happening to him, the other thing that bothers me about Greer is he's part of this camp where they're all benevolent. Now, King put everybody go in and go to and you might have to go to the YouTube channel if you're on Facebook. It's worth it. He talks about this thing in Mexico where like a witch lands on the police car and there's these kinds of things. It is part of it. I think we have to keep in mind, anybody who says it's all evil and demonic, that's highly problematic. Anybody says that it's all good and benevolent, and I had someone on the show 6 or 7 months, and they're all about the fact that it's all good and benevolent. It's a vast universe. We've cataloged some 70 different species, as above, so below. Craig, you and I have both had numerous people on the show that talk about the Bible and God and angels and stuff were actually, interdimensional travelers. I happen to believe that. So I don't think there's one answer to any of it, and it's dangerous to compartmentalize too much. And are aliens posing as fairies, posing as witches, posing as shadow people, posing as ghosts? We don't know. And that's another thing, too, in the field that's bothered me for the past 15 years since I've been in it. They'll go, it's all this. And so all that other crap is crap. There's a guy who died last year. He was very, very well respected, but he was like, ghosts don't exist. It's just interdimensional beings. And anybody that thinks that they're dead human beings is a moron. Well,
I think the best way, especially this thing like you described, is like there's still tribes that have not, that they've never come in contact with, modern civilization. So in a few years, like when technology advances even more, you could literally recreate some of the stuff that that's from the Bible and stuff, where you could have somebody just float down from the heavens, appear before them, have all this abilities, and it's just amazing. And then all of a sudden you float away, and then they would be recording how God visited us, and that would come into thing. So that's one of the things when we've had like Wallace Wagner, we've had these, it's like, it's like, I can see how this could be the case, because it's like, we don't know. He could be an interdimensional traveler. It could be these things that, and I've always, the teachings, it makes you, if it makes you a better person, it's not wrong. I mean, it's like, come on, let's be honest.
Right on.
Like you said, so what? I mean, does it matter if he's from, Zeta Reticuli? I mean, or is he from heaven? I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, it's just, and that's where I think I think there's a little bit of overlap. People want to find the differences, but I think if you actually look at it, it's like you can see, it's like there's a little bit of common ground. I mean, it kind of makes sense that this would seem like we're trying to debate what this orb is, and this, and that's one of the things that we could find down the road, that this is something that either came from the future, came from another dimension. And that's one of the things they're working on. Because, like I said, I don't know, because it seems kind of weird how we have that huge cluster and then they've kind of just gone away.
But they have it.
But like I said, like with the note, and that's why the news, and that's weird. It's just like everybody's talking about it, and it's just kind of like now it's just like they're gone. Yeah, it's not on the news anymore. We're all bored.
But it is still, it is still. It is still happening. So so I thought that was really interesting that they have a PSYOPs officer who's there. So the Immaculate Constellation report reports an F-22 Raptor. This is I was at the Dayton Air Show a couple of years ago. This is a serious piece of equipment. This can go straight up in the air, stop, be totally vertical, go horizontal. It's a serious piece of machinery. It was boxed in by 3 to 6 orbs. Again, Craig, it's the orbs. One matched the Raptor's evasive maneuvers exactly and then forced it off its flight path. That's concerning, but it didn't shoot it down. It didn't disable it. It didn't abduct the pilot. It just let them know, hey, this is one of your best pieces of equipment, and we got your number. Fravor said this, and I've checked it numerous times because people tend not to talk about it. When Fravor had his encounter, the thing disappeared, and it was spotted 60 miles away almost immediately. That's weird. It was the exact coordinates where Fravor's flight group was going. That's even weirder because that's this whole psionic thing that they're talking about now, that there is a mental communication. This thing not only screwed with them, but then disappeared and showed up where they were headed, the exact spot where they were headed. Pretty crazy. So, let's see. Let me see if I can catch up here so we can slow down again. Here's another report. 20 miles off of Kuwait, an orb, again. Orb emerged from the water. It was filmed for 13 minutes by high-def color video from a helicopter. A second orb joined it. And again, this footage is kept in the DoD secure router network. So these orbs are coming up time and time again. Just to stick with the salient points from the hearing, FOIA, Craig, is releasing less info since 2017. So even though it came out and it became more public, they've actually slowed down their release of information. I found that very interesting. Because I think people are being the more information you have, the more pointed your FOIA request can be.
Yeah.
That's problematic for them. That's problematic for the DoD. And they won't release anything related to Arrow at all, which is interesting. And then Gold, the only thing that he said, I want NASA to search its archives for reports. You had Constance Victoria Briggs on your show, right?
Yeah.
She did Galactic Earth, Galactic Moon, the Moon Encyclopedia. Yep. There is more than enough evidence from the astronauts to the controllers to people with ham radios that broke in on the transmissions. NASA has plenty of evidence. They've scrubbed photo. I mean, NASA is just so Elizondo does verify that we have a retrieval reverse engineering program. Grush has said that. These high-level military guys have all said that. Now, Arrow's response to it is, we have a retrieval reverse engineering program, but we've never retrieved nor have we reversed engineered anything. So what the hell are you spending hundreds of millions of dollars on? A maybe? in
Yeah.
case, in the likelihood that a UFO crashes, we have all these highly trained, highly paid, top secret personnel to take care of it. It just kind of stinks. So yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
No,
sir.
go ahead. No, go ahead. I was
No, I'm catching up in the. If you
Eric.
want to say something, I'm catching up
Yeah,
in
because
the.
that was one of those things, especially with NASA. For me, it's always been there's something happened. Whether or not people believe like there was the moon is a artificial satellite that was brought here. That's topics for another show. But that's the one for me. It's just where we're go go go, and there's two things that happened. Either the people that say that we were encountered and told stop. If you know what's good for you, stop, and that's why we stopped. Or the other camp is we were just doing it, and because it was getting old and redundant, and the public was losing interest in it, so that way, the funding was going to start, was starting to dry up for that type of missions, and that's why we went away from it. But it was weird how we were trying to we went from trying to go to the moon and beyond to suddenly, we lost the tapes, and now we don't even know how to get past the radiation belt.
Yeah, right. Well, that's a big thing. The radiation belt is huge.
Mhm.
I'm reading a book right now, and the radiation belt is a serious, serious challenge. So, folks, you can go back and look. We did Mysteries of the Moon, and Constance Victoria Briggs has been on the show twice. Those are episodes we're checking out. I wanted to put this up by Fireswan, who I don't think has attended the show before or commented. So, welcome. Thanks for checking it out. Lastly, paralysis episode, I experienced 6 indigenous men having a discussion with around the same time of men dressed in black suits, sunglasses, and hats. So that's, of course, the Men in Black. I have heard this report from numerous people. And sometimes the Men in Black come around and they do the healing. So I've heard that before. But also this connection of these spirits and these Men in Black. And Tanya and I know from our investigation of the web library, and it's in our book, Watch Out for the Hallway, the Men in Black can be ethereal. And there are some very famous cases of other people who have reported ethereal MIB. So, Craig, Men in Black are another really good example of they can be multiple things, and they probably are. Some are probably government plans. Some may be non-human intelligences. Some are interdimensional and aren't even physical. Some of them are bullcrap that's been fed into the system because it's good for movies and books and TV shows and all that kind of stuff. Thank you for sharing that, because it doesn't sound crazy at all to me. There's numerous cases of exactly that kind of thing.
I know that's always been the debate of what are they? Are they from another realm, another place? Are they us, the government agency, the powers that be that are trying to control the narrative? Are they some version of that's that's what they use to kind of police, many shows like Fringe, was, even Fringe, that was one of the major storylines, in that thing. They had the bald guys, in the black suits and stuff. And it's just, and that's always just been a thing, because a lot of people, they see this, and I've always been curious. It's like where that fit in. It's like that design. It's like, why did that come about? Because it seems like a really highly specific look, even if it's for other world races. It's like for them to decide this is what we want to look at and appear as to the people that see it.
Yeah, I think that X-Files did an extraordinary job of saying it's all of these things. It's numerous things. And we know, and I tell the story all the time about the grandmother at the house, and the kid says, "Oh, grandma, you saw the fairy?" But what she saw the night before was a gray alien in his bedroom. So they do come to people in different. I mean, it's a big, wide, expansive universe, a lot of which we don't friggin' understand. Multiple dimensions. It's we'll have to tackle all of this in over time, because it's an immense subject. So here's one thing that we're finding out, and this is hard data. There are military on disability due to UAP contact. Gary Nolan out of Stanford, and guys, I've talked about this numerous times on the show. He's tested their blood. He's done brain scans. This is all leading to some kind of ionization, radiation. It goes all the way back to the 1960s with what John Keel was reporting about Klee conjunctivitis, eyes getting really red and irritated. Craig, I know a guy, he had a UFO encounter, got within like 20 feet of it, and wound up in the hospital with his blood all kinds of messed up, his heart all kinds of messed up. And the whistleblowers are coming forward. So all I have is my own experiences, 15 years of research now, going on 16 years of research this summer, and lots of interviews and lots of private discussions with other experiencers. So when I see something that aligns, that one of these whistleblowers say, hey, they could have read the literature. They could have talked to these people. They could have been coached. Like, we don't know, but we're doing the best we can. What was really interesting, you had a NASA rep, you had high-level intelligence, you had a journalist that's highly, highly connected, and you have a retired rear admiral, senior meteorologist. Nobody wants to talk about the defense contractors. That's the biggest problem. The Lockheed Martins and all these guys are getting hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. Trillions of these dollars are unaccounted for. And what I always come back to, because I try to be as balanced and thorough as possible, whether it's aliens or whether it's just the next super weapon, they're not being honest about where trillions of dollars are going.
Yeah,
they're not being accountable to Congress, and that's what's problematic.
Because I feel a lot of this, some of the stuff that we can see, it probably has some basis in DARPA and other Black Ops research programs. Because it makes sense. Because one of the things like DARPA has really been working on, has a lot of programs on, is underwater things. So these orbs that are coming, the Tic Tac and stuff, that are being seen around water, would make sense. Because obviously a fighter pilot's not going to know what a DARPA project is. So it's going to seem like otherworldly because, this no window Tic Tac shaped thing, pacing you and flying at unearthly speeds, it's like, it's going to seem, and the same thing like us, we're like, we don't know where it's from. Because what is it? They say, technology, they're at least, isn't it? They say that we're at least 30 years ahead than what they have, than what we currently have. They're like way ahead. Hence, Bob Lazar talking about the hand scanners.
Yeah. And where did all that come from? Is that all just secret that we're still driving combustible engines?
Well,
because that's in some ways. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I agree with it, because I've always, that's been, even with my skeptics, that's why I've always felt something happened in Roswell and around that time, because we jumped from vacuum tubes to transistors.
Yeah.
Like that. There's just like an instant change. It's like there didn't, somebody could tell, say, no, here it is. But I have not found where a logical leap in that technology would happen just from different research. I mean, this is like going from Tesla to Edison over, into like switching, and just going these things, and like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. We were Edison and all of a sudden we switched to the Tesla type thing. I mean, we're off and running. And I think that's where this stuff comes from. Like all of a sudden you're like, I think that's what happened, is something changed, something was introduced, like Terminator, where that little piece gets left over. And now you suddenly have a company that's been created because they've been reverse engineered that little piece of tech that was left behind. And that's where I think something like that happened. Something was recovered, whether it was a crash craft, or it was just something crash landed somewhere. They found it. They're like, what the hell is this? And they started breaking it apart, and they're like, oh my God, this is, and they went with it.
Yeah. And and do we know for sure? We don't know for sure, but we know that Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has an exotic materials division. We know that Bigelow Aerospace has an exotic materials division. We know that the reports that Jesse Marcel and his son around Roswell does not sound like balsa wood. It does not sound like aluminum foil. It just
Did you ever
it
hear the
does.
theory that it was a piece from the Black Knight?
Yeah.
That something broke off and it was like it crashed like a meteor, and that's why they had to cover it, because people were trying to figure out, because of that stuff, and so that's why they staged against the balsa wood and mylar film,
Yeah.
like craft thing. It's just.
And it could, but there's documentation of child-sized coffins, and then there are reports of the Roswell EBEs, the J Rods, all kinds of people going to visit them, including potentially Nixon and Gleason. And Nixon doesn't strike me as doesn't strike me as a false flag guy any more than Donald Trump is a false flag guy. They have big egos, they're in charge, and they're not going to play anybody's game. They're not going to make crap up to put a false flag out there. So just on the whole thing about the private contractors, Harry Reid was a very, very strong proponent of disclosure, but he forced the New York Times to walk back remarks that he made about Lockheed and exotic materials several years ago. So the Leslie Keane and Ralph Blumenthal and all those people, the New York Times, who put out all the stuff about ATIP and all, part of that was talking about possession of exotic materials. And he was like, guys, don't talk about that crap. So it was very interesting, the chill at the congressional hearing when they wanted to talk about. So what they'll say, and Craig, what you were talking about is teasing, but not going too far, is they'll talk about we have to go into a sensitive, compartmentalized information facility, which is a SCIF, a very high-tech, unbuggable, hyper-secure place where people with the right clearances can talk to each other, because not everybody sitting at that congressional hearing table has the same level of clearance. Plus exactly. The public. Yeah. So get this again, Rear Admiral Gallaudet, okay, senior meteorologist in the Navy, highly, highly decorated. We just don't have that many rear admirals floating around. He was targeted by Arrow for 1 hour. He said he showed up to a meeting and he thought that they were going to ask his advice, talk about some reports he had. He said it was a 1 hour influence op early in 2024 to convince him their report was genuine and to discredit incidents and witnesses. So a year ago, 12 months ago, they're sitting down senior members who are thinking about becoming whistleblowers, who have information they want to share, and they're trying to gaslight them. And I'm guessing there's some threats going on with some of that stuff as well. Elizondo said that he and Grush worked together at U.S. Space Force. That's a bit of a confirmation, but we have to hold all of these guys somewhat suspect. That's how we're responsible in what we're doing and taking up all of your time, your guys' time on Thursday nights. So all four of them, though, said that there are non-human intelligences and there are off-world craft. This, Craig, I also think is interesting. Elizondo says that there was material collected in the 1950s. There was a lot going on between 47 and 54, 54 culminating with supposedly Eisenhower signing the Greada Treaty with the NHIs. But anyway, Bigelow Aerospace somehow wound up with this exotic material from the 1950s, and they were ordered to transfer it to the government. Lockheed Martin, the CIA, and Bigelow Aerospace blocked the order, and the material still hasn't been delivered. So that shows you how little power the elected officials have. Either side, blue team, red team.
You can definitely tell there's something behind. There's a power. Yeah. There's a power structure that they have to tiptoe.
Yeah. Let's see here. Again, biologics exist. This is interesting, Craig, just as data points as I try to put the quilt together. Elizondo said that he was born in 1951, and he said that we have had biologics since before he was born. That's Roswell. 4 years before he was born is Roswell. So it's another hint. Mm-hmm. So they throw these little hints. You know what I mean? They're good at playing the game, going right up to the line. I'm sure they have a whole team of lawyers. I forget his name. He has white hair, and he broke the Pentagon Papers story. I really wish I could remember his name, but he's a lawyer who's been involved in this stuff. I talked about him in a previous one of these. So UAPs have split fighter formations down the middle. Ogles, who I said is such a serious dude, said that those withholding information are criminals. Now, is this just a different form of grandstanding? Like, right? So you got Boebert, you got Marjorie Taylor Greene, you got these sort of like performer Congress people, and we've always had performer Congress people, filibusters and all that nonsense. Is being so outspoken and going, we're going to get these guys, and the American people know the truth, and Burchett says, these hearings are a dadgum waste of time. They never tell us anything. They're lying to us. Ogle says they're criminals. On some level, is this just another level of performance? We have to allow for that.
Yeah, I think it's part that, and it's also part to where in their mind too, it's like if I lob this accusation, stuff like that, this is going to force them into action. If I say, you are criminal, and this, that's going to elicit some response. But I think it is really, there's a lot of grandstanding thing. Like, this is my moment to, have everybody focus on me,
Yeah.
So if I get up and wag my finger in the face, like I said, I've got my moment.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to be as healthy a skeptic as possible. I feel some of these people, Ogles, Burchett, Luna, Mace, are sincere. But Craig, you asked about timing earlier, and I've kind of been thinking about that. I didn't have a coherent answer at the time, but Trump is like, we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to tell you the truth about the drones. We're going to tell you the truth about JFK, MLK, and RFK. That empowers the people around him to also say, we're doing truth. Okay, I'll give you some truth too. Like, I'm part of the team. Like, I know stuff. I know how to get people to talk. So it's going to be, if nothing else, it's going to be, that's why I say we might have to just like talk to each other on a Monday and Tuesday and go, let's get some stuff together right now because we need to do this. I think Project Stargate, let's get a little more information on that first.
Did you see my comment from a little earlier?
I might have missed it. The chat room's very active, which is
awesome. Tune in next Thursday. There's going to be a huge announcement.
Oh, so are we changing things up?
Oh no! There's going to be a change. Yeah, as I said, this is a hook. This is a tease. Tune in next Thursday.
Well, you'll have to educate me because I'm not.
I know this because this is going to surprise Joey as much as everybody else. So he'll learn after the show. But everybody else tune in.
Oh, okay.
Tune in next Thursday, and
so we're not
going to find
Sinister. We're not doing Sinister.
No, we're doing Sinister Mysteries next. Yeah, next week. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's going to be an announcement during the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
This is a late Christmas present for Joey, by the way, everybody.
Oh. I wonder what's going on. Okay, so ABC News, November 14th, says that from May 2023 to June 2024, Arrow looked at 757 new cases. 485 of them were from that period of time, 23-24, 272 of them from 21-22. No evidence of ET activity or technology. 21 cases are national security concerns. And that, Craig, that is a historic, like, it's kind of low, actually. Well, let me see here. Let me just check something here real quick. If you want to just Phil, I just got to do something real quick here.
Oh, yeah. No, it's, yeah, for me, because you started like, where was I on disclosure? And I've been one of those things. Like I said, anybody that's watched me for a long time knows I'm a healthy skeptic, but I've gotten more of these things, kind of what we just talked about, timing. I feel like a lot of these guys, they're not a nefarious disinformation artist. I think some of them have been given the marching orders, and they said, here, I need you to tell people about this, this, and this, and this. You can't tell them about this, but you can tell them this and this, because of it. Then it appeased at that time Donald Trump, and it would be the same thing like here. I expect it to ramp up in the next couple of months. Like, we're going to get some more stuff this time around too. Starting with JFK, these things are going to come out, and it's just like what we talked about. I'm probably in the middle of the show, the FOIA requests and stuff. they've already changed. They're already new program names. There's all these things, but what they're going to do now is they're going to do it yet again. You're going to have, okay, these orbs are Project Starfish, blah, blah, I'm making this stuff up, people. This is, Bob's going to come out, blah, blah, blah. They're going to talk about all these things, and we're going to be like, oh my God, this is something I've never heard before. Boom, we're going to run with this. Meanwhile, just once again, it's deviated to something else. They're already way decades ahead of where we're catching up, but it's going to be new information, and it's going to be somebody else. It's going to be, Bob is always my joke name. It's going to be, it's going to be Bob is going to come out. He's going to be this guy, whistleblower. They're doing this program and this program. But what it is it's something that, like they've always said for people who watch their shows, they have to announce what they're doing before they can do it.
Oh yeah.
And so this is their way of achieving, of meeting that goal. But at the same time, you can keep it secret because everybody's now focused on the latest little breadcrumb that they've thrown off this way. And it's just go to the beach sometime, throw a piece of bread. What happens? All the seagulls fly that way. And you keep on walking, you don't have any problem. They start flocking in. You throw another thing, they all fly away. And that's kind of what it seems like it's happening. But under the first administration, now his second term, it seems like there's kind of like that ramp up. Like the things just like, really start happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if it's all of a piece, because we'll definitely do a show on this Project Stargate, or the Stargate project with $500 billion for AI. Not a fan, not a fan at all. But anyhow, so Arrow has a new director, John Kozlowski. What I was doing there was, typically it's like 5%. Historically, it's been like, we don't know what the hell these things are. Arrow's taking it down to less than 3%. So there's even more of a push to go. This isn't concerning, all of that kind of stuff. Basically, November 19th, this new guy, John Kozlowski. Now, some of the insiders think that Kozlowski is going to be more forthcoming. I think that Kirkpatrick way overplayed his hand, protested way too much. And as all of this stuff was coming in, he went to war with Grush. He went to war with some other people. I think that's why they got rid of him. And now they have to be a kinder, gentler Arrow, who's going to be a little more forthcoming. I think that's what's going on there. So commenting on the hearing then, once it was over, Ross Coulthart, Australian journalist I've been following closely on News Nation, says that there have been quite a few skiffs at the end of 2024. We don't know what's going on in these. We do know that it seems like the more they have these private meetings, Craig, the more they want to have the public meetings, the more they're calling for more whistleblowers. So whatever they're hearing, these Congress people, it's feeding them. Whether it's genuine or not, it's jazzing them and it's pushing them to keep going forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it seems to ebb and flow. Because you'll have somebody like, what was it, a couple years ago, Marco Rubio was all about, he suddenly was just like all in, this needs to be found out. Well, then he just kind of trailed off.
Yeah, he kind of passed it off to other people.
Yeah, it was either he was told, you were way out of line, you need to stay in your stay in your lane, or it was a grandstand. I mean, it's got to be one of the two, because it's just, how do you have so passionate about something and then you just kind of like, yeah, I'm not, enough about that.
I think here's what happened. When the 12-page report came out, it was really like so anticlimactic that I think it made Rubio look kind of foolish. Remember, he was like, it's a line item and you have to file this report and we're going to get this disclosure. And there was all this huge buildup. And when the report came out, it was so flimsy and so nothing. I have it here somewhere. I think that, and then when the Schumer amendment got defeated, that was another big one. But now Rubio is sex state. Not sex tape, folks. Secretary of State. He is now the Secretary of State. So if you get Tulsi Gabbard in and you get some of these other people in, and it's hard to know how this is going to go, they all seem to want to talk about this stuff. So we'll just sort of see. But Rubio's a Florida guy. You got to be pretty happy. Secretary of State's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, to see how he does. I mean, he's got connections, so I mean, it would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had serious problems with Anthony Blinken, so goodbye.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
yeah. There's a lot of them.
And having journalists pulled out of his press conference by Capitol Police was chilling.
Yeah,
America's starting to look like not America.
yeah. That's not supposed to happen in the U.S. It's
No,
where
no,
forcibly
no.
removing the press. Yeah,
Yeah, that was scary as he's holding on to the table and saying,
yeah,
"You're hurting me. You're hurting me." Where's the free speech? And his voice is breaking because he's so filled with adrenaline.
yeah. The only thing that was missing was the rifle butt to the back of his. That was the only thing that was missing in that scene.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, DNI, Director of National Intelligence candidate Tulsi Gabbard, I'm rooting for her. And CIA Director candidate John Radcliffe, I think I'm also rooting for Radcliffe for CIA, are pro-disclosure, and so is Trump. So there's a lot of hopefulness. I think it's going to be dashed, Craig. But there's a lot of hopefulness right now. November 14th, Burchett, who's been very vocal, said that the hearings have been bogus. The skiffs. Here's how he talks about the skiffs are a bunch of smirking men with man buns. That's how he describes the defense contractors, smirking men with man buns, and imagine that in a Tennessee accent, a deep Tennessee accent, perpetrating a cover-up. He thinks that the drones have Chinese components and that they will capitalize on whatever's happening right now, meaning the Chinese. So here's the thing about the drones. I'll try to go through this quickly. Obviously, we're going to go the full 90 minutes because I want to wrap this up. Drones in December. Some of the things that were being said was that there was an Iranian mothership off the coast. These things were coming out of the water. Craig, we're finding out that some of them have no radio signals. Some of them are transforming into orbs, or orbs are transforming into drones. That's really
I never bought that Iranian thing. It's like how would the Iranians go from we can't even figure out how to, like the dictator, we're still trying to figure out if we want a pointy or a round top rocket or one that's pointy to scare our thing, to all of a sudden they're supposedly parking a drone ship off our coast and we didn't see it coming. So I was like, no.
But it's the Steve Bannon thing. Flood the field with shit.
Yeah. That's what.
Yeah. If serious people are talking about serious things and people are starting to listen because they're serious people, and I'm hearing you say that a little. You've always kind of been, more to the cynical than the skeptical, but there's enough credible people coming out that you're listening. The easiest way to screw that up is to send a nut job in or to send in some false information, because you're absolutely right. You go, oh, I knew it. I thought this was serious, and now all of a sudden it's a Iranian mothership off the coast of, get the hell out of here with this crap. And people turn away. And that's what the whole having the PSYOP officer in the Pentagon Public Relations House is about. And we saw it in X-Files, and we saw it in Fringe, and we've seen it all too often in real life. Government gaslighting is definitely going on. But at the same time that it was looking more and more ridiculous right before Christmas, they instituted no-fly zones over 20 to 30 New Jersey installations, electric generating centers, airports, Bedminster. Trump canceled his trip home to New Jersey around Christmas time because of security issues because of these drones. Now, did they do it on purpose? Are they ours? And so they wanted to mess with, some people say that they cannot be jammed or controlled. Lou Elizondo is saying this, even with the best high-end equipment. So some of these things don't operate. Now, yes, some of them are misidentified airplanes. Some of them are clearly big drones. One went past our house, Craig, several weeks ago. Red and green flashing lights. You could hear the rotors. It was clearly a drone. It was a drone. That's what it was.
Yep.
But when people are talking about, Greer's making the rounds, we talked about that. I can get rid of that. But
school bus sized, ones that are going by, and
size, right.
You're like, so nobody could get a video of this massive school bus size thing going by, seeing that all of us have smartphones now.
Yeah. So on one hand, everybody thinks that this has died down, but it really hasn't. Up until a couple days ago, they're still seeing them in Wyoming. They're seeing them in Louisiana. They're seeing them in Virginia, and still, again, they're seeing them in New Jersey. The mayor of Mine Hill Township, New Jersey, Russ Coulthard, interviewed him last weekend. He saw 2 of these things in mid-January. He saw one of the jellyfish orbs, which are really strange. Craig, have you seen footage of these weird jelly? He actually saw one of these things. Now, he says that prior to December 26th, 40% of these things were unidentified. Now it's down to 10%. So are they purposely flooding the field with airplanes and classic drones, mundane things to go to people? Look, that seems weird to me.
They could. I mean, his Joseph just put on there that he saw one last night.
Oh, yeah, Joe, and I got your text, and I'm sorry I didn't answer. Joe, was it a classic one where you could hear the rotors and it had the typical lights, or was it something different?
Because it would make sense to where
ask you how big it was, because nobody can ever.
Yeah, because it one of the things is it'd be it's better to flood with a whole bunch of things. Like if you have something you're trying to cover, you just throw stuff out there, and then it just becomes white noise. You've got all these things like, oh my God, I see one, and then you're just kind of like, okay, there's this is something else going on.
I mean, it was silent and pretty big, he says.
Yeah,
so silent is interesting because the drone works on a propeller system.
Yeah,
your typical ones.
So you might have seen the actual thing, my man.
Well,
not the rotor ones. You might have actually seen one of the ones that they report that run silent.
Yeah. There you go. So that's pretty cool. Joe's highly credible. So I love that. So here is a theory, speaking of all of this, and I really kind of like this theory. As a partial explanation, that this is an audition of the high-tech drone companies, and they need to put them out in the field to show what they can do, what they can evade, how advanced they are. Let's remember that Elon Musk's brother Kimball, who's worth $700 million, is heavily into the drone game. And also, check this out. I don't know if you do this, Craig. Matt Getz's brother married the sister of Palmer Luckey. Palmer Luckey invented the Oculus Rift, right, which was very game-changing as far as virtual reality. Then I believe sold that company and started Anduril, which this is the real Anduril, so screw him.
Yeah.
I really hate that I really hate, Craig, I hate that they co-opt these Lord of the Rings names, these bastards. But anyway, and that is high-tech AI weapons and surveillance. So Matt he's part of the family now.
Which, that's why I picked the name. It's like that's a sword weapon, that they do. Yeah, that's why they incorporate these things.
Shouldn't be allowed. and when if J.R.R. Tolkien was putting these guys in the in the Saruman camp or the Sauron camp, or you know what I mean, the Gray Wizard and the White Wizard camp, rather, they would not be on the good guy team, I don't think.
Joseph, your thing, I don't know if you can. I don't know if the name in itself is copyrightable, like where you can't you can prevent somebody from using a name.
Yeah, no, because there's Mithril and there's
I think
Mithril,
you would have
is based on a real word.
Yeah, I think if you used it in the same context, probably, but when it's just you're simply using it, it'd be kind of like Tesla. It's like that. The test. Like I said, that nothing has to be. There's no rights or anything to the name Tesla. I mean, it's like Nikola Tesla. Somebody else could call.
Right.
Yeah. So as I said, I don't know. I'm not a copyright attorney, so mine is just talking out the side of my beard.
Even though I'm a writer, and maybe they did do that.
Yeah,
maybe they did secure the rights. I mean, these guys are worth billions of dollars, right? So yeah, we could look into that. So anyway, this is interesting. So Ross Coulthard interviews these 2 guys, the Tedesco brothers, and they have been filming orbs since November of 2022 over Long Island. Really interesting guys. Their names are Jerry and John. They're definitely of my tribe. They kind of look like my cousin Billy. Really interesting, but they have all these really cool gadgets and gizmos and radars and stuff. some of these things, orbs, are only visible in the infrared spectrum, unless a drone shines a spotlight on them, and then you can see them with the naked eye. So whatever material or whatever energy, these orbs somehow interacting with that light spectrum of a searchlight, you can see them with the naked eye. That's pretty wild.
Yeah,
That's pretty wild if we're to believe these guys. Also, too, no thermal signal. Okay, so whatever kind of propulsion they have, it's exotic. Hard to track on radar. They have jammed these guys' radars. Now that could be high military tech jamming like a civilian's radar. Okay, so we can allow for that. One stayed stationary and silent for an hour. Also, too, Craig, these guys bounce radar signals. They're on Long Island, so they're not at Montauk, but they're on Long Island. They're bouncing radar off of large ships and bringing it back. And it passes through these orbs, and it's distorting gravity. They're getting an interference pattern as the radar signal hits these orbs, and it disperses into an interference pattern. And
isn't that one of the properties of element 115?
Oh, it might be. It might very well be.
Where they, to do that thing is like, doesn't it create like something, it interacts with gravity?
Yeah. And that's called gravitational lensing. So if these things are if these are gravimetric, right? Electrogravimetric vehicles, that's a big deal. So again, what is the timing? As they're going to be rolling out AI, as they're going to be rolling out whatever the next chapter is in our industrial technological revolution, maybe they need to come clean on 0-point energy. Which is weird because Trump is pushing so hard on classic, the war in Ukraine, let's face it, that's being fought over classic energy. So much of what goes on in the Middle East is over classic, fossil fuels, so to speak. Craig, I got another page to go. We're coming, the audience numbers are still up. You want to press on?
Oh, we can, yeah.
All right, guys, if you need to check out, go ahead and check out, but I'd like to get this shelved for tonight.
I'm good.
So I'll keep going here because check this out. These things are emitting pulses. It's two frequencies at the same time, 1.7 gigahertz and 1.8 gigahertz. And the only time they emit the pulses is when they're in groups. So somehow they're using 1.7 gigahertz matched with 1.8 gigahertz as a way to communicate when they're in a group. So that's pretty cool. All right, thank you. We'll keep going. Some folks said this is interesting enough. We'll just keep going. 17 of these drones swarmed over a Long Island airport, and they've also been under JFK, which is a very big, central hub kind of airport. Now, this is one of the strangest things, Craig. Ryan Graves reports this. I think Lazar talked about stuff like this. And some other people have talked about it. Oh, it's in the Immaculate Constellation report. A spinning cube or polyhedron within a sphere. That's not us.
Yeah. No, that's kind of why the shape. And then I was looking like as you were saying that stuff, I typed that in. 1.7 and 1.8 gigahertz frequencies are cell phone.
Okay.
Like 4G. So that's one of those. I mean, is that one of the reasons why they switched us off 4G to 5G? Is that basically made that available, and that would definitely, the ones that are using that I would definitely be more towards leaning that was a terrestrial use over an otherworldly one, which would be the thing. If that's communicate, that you could definitely, that might be a tie to what's actual military aspect, instead we could go, that's us. Like if you could detect that, I mean, that might be a way of determining, okay, that's us.
Yeah, it could be. And going with the two frequencies at once. I'm not an
Yeah.
I'm not an electrical engineer, so I don't know what the ramifications of them might be. Let's see here. So, okay, so this is the big thing that we'll finish up with tonight, because this is so damn interesting. So on January 18th, Russ Coulthart, who's been following all this, he broke the Grush story. People are trusting him, and so they're coming forward, and he's the guy that everybody's talking to now. And it's a new face, and it's a fresh face, and I trust him. Gets away from some of the other talking heads, which is healthy. Anyway, I'll go back 3 days from that. On January 15th, Coulthart teases all of us. He says, I've been working on a story for 2 years. I have this tier 1 special ops U.S. Air Force helicopter pilot named Jake Barber. I've corroborated his service record with 3 people. Lou Elizondo on his own podcast prior says Barber's legit. He doesn't know him personally, but he knows people who know him. And apparently Arrow knows this guy's story, which is incredible. He was sent as an independent contractor. Basically, he retired from the U.S. Air Force so that he could become an independent contractor for the defense contractors. So he was sent to retrieve an egg-shaped craft. He got to within 150 feet of it. No thermal signature. So there we have that again, like the orbs, and no engine. 2 others have corroborated his story. I'll give you one of the guys' names in just a couple minutes. So this got all of our attention. Oh, another whistleblower, but this guy has firsthand, right? Keep in mind, Grush said he's seen a ship. Most of his stuff comes secondhand. He's talked to 40 people supposedly. So this guy, so they break the story. So Barber's talking about psionics during UAP retrieval. So Craig, you were talking about these orbs probably not having pilots in them. It seems to be that's what's happening. They're being controlled by some kind of telepathy. And apparently the U.S. government has trained individuals who can call these things in. Now, Tanya and I have spoken publicly, and other people have too. You can call these things in just by singing Sentimental Journey or just having the intention. We've done it. We've had people come to the Creative Cottage here, and we've sat in the yard, and they do. They come up over the tree line. They're orbs. They change colors. Sometimes they stay stationary, and then they kind of go away. So this is one of the things that I can say, yeah, we can do this. It's a little confusing to me why the U.S. government is calling in these orbs and UAPs, and they're actually coming. Because then we're retrieving them and we're taking them to secret locations. And so I'm a little confused by that. That doesn't make sense to me. What do you make of that claim?
Well, one, I got to, I've been meaning to, I got to get up there and see anyway, but I would love to go up there and do this because I am such a huge, skeptic of the call-in thing. Because I've always just said that where I'm like, I just cannot get on board with there's a alien race that's just hanging out, floating in the sky, waiting for one of us to do a kumbaya session in our yard, and then they're like, "All right, I'll come see you." Fly down and cruise and then fly away. I'm just like, because I'm just that's always been in my head, but I'm like, people have said it's like, no, you can do it. I'm like, okay, so maybe it isn't an alien craft alien. Maybe there's something else. Maybe we're into like the dimensional thing. We're into like, because there's always whether the culture, the jinn, you have all these things. Maybe this is something along the lines of like the fae. There's something other thing to it that's like the sentimental journey. Maybe there's a frequency that's attractive. Like it hits on a frequency note that's suddenly like, like a bug, like a bug light. You turn a flashlight on, the bugs come to it, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, that's nothing," and they fly away. Yeah, and maybe that's what's going on.
That's what I think it is. I think it's a pervasive consciousness. You're a religious guy, so people call on God. They call on their angels. There have been stories about that. I think it's energy. And as long as we match the frequency of an energy, I just don't understand why they would come because they're coming in actual craft. I'm not saying that we've ever summoned a craft. We certainly have not. These are lights in the sky that are not airplanes and things like that. And they do come. I wouldn't even say it's on command. It's cooperative, if that makes sense. Yeah. We're not saying come here and impress all our guests with our power, But I think if the intention is right, and someone said in the chat room, Oklahoma Nana said like calling in Bigfoot with good intentions. Yeah, and I do think Sentimental Journey, all music is mathematical. So there must be something in the intervals, in the sequences that have
Maybe
been
the
hidden.
flute is like the dog whistle for Bigfoot. He's just coming over to tell you to knock it the hell off.
Yeah.
Just like you played a flute, you know?
Yeah.
Only
Yeah,
Jethro
and-
Tull fans like the flute. Come on.
Hey, I'm a huge Jethro Tull fan. Every day I listen to a little Tull. So
Yeah.
proud Tull fan here. And anything that he guests on. Because
Yeah, Space Force is a thing. That one was, you know, it actually. Thank you for bringing that up, because that goes back to what we were talking about with the Trump thing. I am a believer that was a form of disclosure, that this was like preparing people, like this is the future of this thing coming, because everybody mocked him, but it's like, you know, you start thinking they've got however, you know, what's a better way to start rolling out the fact that we have stuff than we suddenly have the infrastructure for it. We actually have the galactic Marines.
Yeah, and you and I did Solar Warden.
Mm-hmm.
And if guys like Musk and all are serious about colonizing the moon and colonizing Mars, you always bring the military. When
You're going to have Space Marines.
Yeah, you're going to have that.
I mean, you go into the movie Alien. You know, that's the thing. Eventually, I mean, who better fits that Weyland character than Musk?
Yeah. Oh,
you know,
that's
creating
absolutely right.
The space industry, you know, and that's, yeah.
I don't know if you're keeping up with current events, but we just got our asses kicked.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you gotta have Marines.
Man. So I love that. That's my favorite of all those movies, Allie. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. I just love that movie. So anyway, so this guy Barber is part of the USAF Combat Control with a top secret UN clearance. These guys are serious as a freaking heart attack. So 2001, post 9/11, he leaves the USAF and he establishes cover as an independent contractor. So of course, these guys have billions and billions of dollars. They recruit high-level military talent. They pay them well. These guys get to do all kinds of cool crap, and everybody's happy. And they don't have to answer to anybody because that's how it's set up. So he saw at a place that he calls the Range, which does us no good because we don't know where the Range is. But he saw very advanced tech there. I have a feeling it's somewhere out around Dulce Base, Southwest. I have a funny feeling. He saw transmedium. Now, Craig, this is interesting. Remember when we did Pine Gap? And we did Pine Gap in Australia with the Five Eyes. But then I did take a little time. You graciously gave me some time to talk about the UFO sightings. And one of the things that people talk about is UAPs going in and out of the side of a mountain there, or coming out of the ground. It's the same thing we hear about Dulce Base in New Mexico. Well, this dude actually said that he saw these things coming in and out of ridges. So is there a secret doorway? Are they able to go from matter to non-matter and back to matter? There's a guy who's really high up in MUFON. That's my international sign language for really high up. He's really high up in MUFON, and he says that he thinks that they start solid, go to non-matter to cross different, wormholes, that kind of stuff, and then they re-solidify some of them. I think that kind of could be what's going on.
Because S4, you know, the site in Nevada is said to have that the doorway that opens up. You know, that basically it matches nature. It's like it opens up and then it comes right back together, and it's like you wouldn't even be able to tell it's there. So,
right. And we're getting all these independent. That's why I love crunching the big amounts of data. And that's why I just have these files full of, when you look at things in proximity, you go, oh, wait a minute. Somebody else talked about that. No, 3 other people talked about that. He talks about a military trained psionic team that is used to summon these things, that summon this egg-shaped UFO, like what Wallace Wagner saw, what Lonnie Zamora and other people have seen. His story so far has been corroborated, not on the record, but by the journalist, by UAP Task Force ranking members. So those are pretty high up people that it was definitely off world what he was transporting in his helicopter or from a tether on his helicopter. Arrow had the report, and actually, guys, go to News Nation, go to Ross Coulthard's report where he talks to Jake Barber, and you can see video footage, infrared video footage of a helicopter, the bottom of the helicopter with a tether transporting this egg. Now, Craig, does it mean that it's off world? No, but
Yeah.
he is transporting something that's egg shaped. Okay, so I'm kind of getting through this. He also says that there's something called an 8-gon, so an 8-sided saucer. And he says that as he was transporting this from Africa to wherever he was going, and he was flying for about 20 minutes, that he had a beautiful psi experience with this thing, that it was communicating it with him telepathically, that he was crying. And he says that he was possessed by a spirit that was both loving and had some sadness. That's a wild claim.
Yeah, well, this is where the skeptic, Laura will
Right
like this part. This is where I come back in, and I'm like, this is what in the courts, the opposing counsel raises their thing and says objection. Speculation. They go in the same because this is something that you can't prove. I mean, it's like because there's no way to verify this. Because it's just I could come with oh my God, I just got a message from, like it's telling us that there's no way to prove that I'm actually getting this thing. It's like you could have, people, all you have to do is Stephen King, incredible mind. I've said this, several times on the show. He could, if you just based off of he would say, you could say he's the greatest experiencer of all time.
Right. Okay. So just stick with it for now. Fair enough, but stick with it, and we're going to come back to you. So after
there I go again.
right after he has it, and that's why I was excited that you were with me tonight. And it's been quite the journey. We're setting a record for length of show, but anyway, right after that happened and he had that experience, he and the rest of his team, 3 other members, were all in the hospital. He became very, very ill, lost all of his hair. The skin was sloughing off his arms. He developed a heart murmur that he never had before, and he had lesions on his body. Now, Gary Nolan, who did all this work for the CIA, they pay him very well to look at these cases, helped get people, disability, people in the military. He reviewed the medical files, and he says that this guy was exposed to radiation. Now, that doesn't mean that he had the psi experience, but I don't think it was a plastic model kit, staged for the media. This is pretty horrific stuff. There was a guy on Skinwalker Ranch, and stick with me with Skinwalker Ranch, whose scalp separated from his skull after he had a weird experience. It separated from his skull. He wound up in the hospital. So anyway.
Yeah, that was a security guard, right?
Yeah, he's no, it wasn't Dragon. No, it was the ranch manager.
Okay, yeah.
The guy with the cowboy hat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Dragon. Not Dragon. Yeah. No, I always give myself away where I stand with people. I can't help myself. So anyway, Dragon is one of those guys that always looks like he's smelling something bad all the time. So 2 incidents happened in December 1980, and I never put this together, Craig. That's why I love
the Sharpies down.
Data. I had it 2 different places in my notes, and I brought it together. The serviceman from Rendlesham. Didn't you and I do Rendlesham? Didn't we do an episode on Rendlesham Forest?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was in December of 1980. One of those servicemen, thanks to John McCain, and I think Gary Nolan was somewhat involved, got disability for things that are related, are consistent with radiation. Okay. December 29th. So it's almost the same damn day, because I remember Rendlesham was right around New Year's. It was between Christmas and New Year's. December 29th in Dayton, Texas, was the Cash Landrum incident, where these 2 women and their children were driving home. Suddenly this thing lands. Some people think that maybe it was a MyLab. It was a military abduction operation kind of thing. Nobody was abducted, but they had serious radiation symptoms after, and one of them ultimately died of cancer. So that's really interesting correlations there. Okay. So then enter this guy, Jim Segala. Now, anybody who's a fan of Skinwalker Ranch, you'll heard of Jim Segala. He worked in the Uinta Basin for a long time. He worked at Skinwalker Ranch. He worked with Defense Intelligence Agency. Craigie worked with DARPA. He confirms that the radiation symptoms are consistent with these experiences. He also worked with Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ at Stanford Research Institute headed up the Stargate project, which was remote viewing.
Yep.
It's very interesting now that this $500 billion Stargate project carries the same name. That's very, very interesting to me. It kind of go, okay. And they tested psi subjects, sentient experiences with these things, which back up Jake Barber's claim. Now, again, Craig, you could say it's all BS. I mean, a lot of people in the government said the remote viewing project was BS. They also claimed to have shut down Stargate, just like they said they shut down MK Ultra, so on and so forth. You and I know that's bullshit. It just changes names. So
no, keep going.
No, I was just gonna say real quick. So Barber says psionics teams. Well, that's exactly what they were doing with remote viewing, where they found the Russian sub, where they found the crashed plane in the jungle that Jimmy Carter.
I'm a believer in the remote viewing things. That people are able to do. I think there's a lot of people that, it's like the broken clock is right twice a day, type thing. You can some people can just get lucky and hit on some stuff, but then there's other ones where there's no explanation for this. I mean, you literally dead on described, they to a T what's over in this thing. And I think like what the Skinwalker Ranch, I think there's a chance that the reason why he's getting these mysterious head injuries is just like what happened with what they're calling the Havana syndrome, where these are it's a targeted weapon that can be used as a deterrent, but it also has these severe effects on some people to where people end up with serious injuries like head injuries and stuff from these things. And that might have been like they got too close to something they weren't supposed to be, and they used this thing to repel the person, and because of that he ended up with these mysterious head injuries, and why he got it and nobody else.
Because I have even though Brandon Fugel, the real estate mogul out of Utah, owns Skinwalker Ranch, I have a sneaky suspicion that Bob Bigelow's still involved somehow.
Oh, I'm sure.
Maybe he needed a new front person. That same thing. It's that same thing, right? Too many people were asking too many books came out, too many news reports. You change hands, you give it a different front. You put it on the History Channel with Prometheus, who does Oak Island and Ancient Aliens, and suddenly people go, "Oh, well, this is entertaining, but it's obviously crap."
Yeah, you just end up with more of the cult of personality than you do, the actual scientific,
the hair and the weird,
I still am forgiving him for not. I still am forgiving him for not figuring out where the water went.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
I know that was pretty early on. That was
like the second episode or something like that, and they're like, the water disappeared, and we never heard about it again.
That's all. That's all produced by the same people. It's very thorny. So anyway, this is interesting about Barber. They get sent on a recovery mission. This is like something out of Mission Impossible. They get sent on a recovery mission. Now they've done these UAP things. They've recovered, the 8-gun and the egg and all this kind of stuff. They also, part of their mission was high value targets. So these Panasonic Tough books that are filled to the brim with sensor data from retrieval programs suddenly go missing. So their contact in the defense contractor says, you got to go find these things. So they go out, they do this mission, they find the Tough books, and the hard drives are gone. So then a different intelligence person says, we know where the hard drives are. They're in a container 25 feet under the water. We need you guys to go get them. They go to get them. There ain't no hard drives, and shots are fired. So they come to find out that they were lured in to get murdered.
Yeah. No, I was just like, as you're telling the story, I'm just in my head, I'm like going, that seems like a setup.
Yeah, well, it
Yeah.
was.
Who removes the hard drives, puts them in a little box, tosses them in the water? Oh, yeah, they're there. Well, why don't you go get them? You already know what
Yeah,
they're at. Go get them. Why do I
yeah.
have to? You know, then you're like,
So this is
suspicious.
crazy.
Go
This
into
is
this
crazy
strange
stuff.
dark alley and find these hard drives that are mysteriously in the back where nobody can see. Oh, okay.
So people who were playing bingo at home, Don Paul Bales, Bales, was also on these missions. He corroborates the story. They surveil the chart. They have to make. So you were talking about it's got to be one or the other, Craig. They go either the defense contractor screwed us, or the defense contractor got infiltrated. So they go to Washington D.C. These highly trained dudes, and they surveil their target. I guess he like practically puts the guy up against the wall and confronts him. Now Barber has a group called Skywatcher, which I'll get to in just a second. But anyway, Russ Coulthart, who's like you, Craig, he's like, I don't even know how to report this stuff. You're talking about mental communication with these orbs, with these energy things. I don't know what to make of this, but I'm reporting it, and I think there's something to it. He says that he went to Fort Bragg outside in a field, and he watched these psionics guys summoning these things, calling them in. That's really, if you want to be taken seriously as a journalist these days, that's a really weird thing to make up, to lie.
Yeah, that's one of those. It's I've always been the ones that have nothing to gain. I believe I have a little bit more interest in what they're saying, because then that's because they've got everything to lose.
And
there's
credibility
no
is
upside.
such an issue. Credibility is such an issue because you're talking to high level people. Even if they're not coming forward, they're not going to answer their phone if you're talking like a crazy person. They're just not going to. So just a couple more things, and then we're going to let everybody go, because I'm dying to know what the secret announcement is that I'm not aware of. So got to get off camera first. So, okay.
Teaser.
So Coulthart gets Gallaudet, right, the rear admiral, and this other guy, Mark von Rempenkopf, ex Department of Defense, to come on. They trust him. They know people who know people. The guy seems trustworthy. And then there's this other guy who comes on camera, Lieutenant Colonel John Blitch, ex Green Beret, Craig. So again, you were highly decorated Green Beret. You were Delta Force. What the hell are you talking about this crap for if it's all bullshit? It doesn't make any sense to me, right? So he says that, what these guys are talking about is true. This guy was in charge of a nuclear battalion. Pretty serious dude. They can't all be crazy. There's that general from Israel, and they made it out like he's a doddering old senile Alzheimer's case. You can't do that with all these guys. You can't go, oh no, they're all insane. They're all mentally ill. Because then you're going, oh, you give government clearances and put, crazy people in charge of nuclear battalions. Like, what's going on with our military? So, so Gallaudet says that he believes this guy. Well, there's already a big social media campaign, folks. So you may see people absolutely thrashing Jake Barber on your TikToks and your Instagrams and all that kind of stuff. But Gallaudet, the rear admiral, believes that this is coming from inside the intelligence community, that it's their people seeking to discredit this guy. So last thing I wanted to so Tim Gallaudet believes in the psi element, and he brought up Stargate and remote viewing. So Jake has this team now called Skywatcher. They've been investigating the drone since August of 2024. They summoned one. The drone showed up, or the drone orb thing showed up. Another drone showed up, and they had a dogfight in the air. And the guy who summoned them got really sick and pulled out of the whole thing. It's fantastical stuff. I admit it, Craig. It's fantastical, but they're talking publicly about it. Gary Nolan was with them. Now, Nolan's making big money. He holds a bunch of patents. He's at Stanford University. Talking crazy ain't going to help your career.
Oh, no.
So it's weird. So like I said, Trump has, I loved it. He was You notice how all of a sudden they said the Resolute desk, the Resolute desk. It just used to be the Oval Office. Now it's the Resolute desk. He's behind the Resolute. I read Biden's letter, but he goes, we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out about the drones, okay? Susie, find out about these drones. And I was thinking, I wish that I was kind of in power, Craig, where I could just go, Susie, find out about the drones. Susie, find out about JFK.
It'd be nice. It's like, I need a Diet Coke and information on the drones. Make it happen.
Yeah. Give me everything you got on MLK, which I guess is what's going to happen with the AI eventually. Yeah. I don't know. So,
I mean, for anybody that doesn't know what the Resolute desk is, I mean, as I said, it's a matching set that was created from the Resolute. The HMS. It was
from a ship.
Yeah, it was created. And it was a gift to the U.S. from England. And so I said, for anybody that doesn't know what the Resolute desk is, but it's one of those, or if Nicolas Cage, it holds the secrets. Yeah, you got to find the piece.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Where you got into that Oval Office to find the secret in the desk. Yep.
So, folks, quite a few of you stayed with us for the 2 hours. Thank you. I really just wanted to get that done. Put that behind us because we got so much else to cover. I have some guests coming on. I think you're going to love it. Beginning of March, Reverend Carter is coming back to talk about exopolitics. So if there are these higher intelligences in the universe, they have governments, we have a government. He and I have both heard people talk about the fact that I was in a room and there were humans there and there were extraterrestrials there. Craig, Ashtar Command, the Galactic Council, all of that. Mm-hmm. So he really wants to talk about that. He and I are talking almost every day, either by phone or by preparing for that. I got Mike Cobb, the author, coming back. I want to do a show on debunking Amityville and the Warrens. I just feel compelled to do it.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, it's kind of old news now, and probably nobody gives a crap. But I want to do it. There's a really good
entertaining.
There's a really good book called "The Night the DeFeos Died," about what really went on with Ronnie DeFeo, and it's amazing. And then also too, it does talk about how a bottle of wine was opened and the Lutzes had a problem to solve, and Jay Aarons and the Warrens were looking for something sexy to make some money on, and that's how that all went down. So, all right, folks, we're gonna check out here quite abruptly. Next week we are doing Sinister Ministries. Yep.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So that's another in our series of exposing these religious and otherwise cults. What are we doing? We're doing Opus Dei, and the Japanese one.
Yeah, if you hadn't said anything, I would have been able to jump right on it.
Oh, I don't know how I managed that. Oh, we're gonna do the family.
Yes.
Opus Dei and Shin Chionji.
Yep. And then for anybody that doesn't know, this was born out of my inability to get the name of our show right. I kept saying it was Sinister Mysteries, and I kept saying Sinister Ministries. And it was like a Freudian slip. I just kept saying it. And so that birthed the thing. It's like, why don't we actually do a show on Sinister Ministries and actually do what, make use of it. So this is the second one of our Sinister Ministries.
Yeah.
On Sinister Mysteries.
We have covered some of the other cults too. We did Nexium and what's his name? Charles Manson's family. As its own separate creature. So, hey, a bunch of people in the chat room found like minds and kindred spirits and are becoming friends. So that's good. We got a lot of good stuff.
Community's growing.
25 is going to be a good year. And folks, I guess next week you'll know the announcement once.
Yes. He's going to know here in just a second.
Craig's got a cookie plot coming up, and I'm about to find out what it is. So you all go do something else now. But thank you for staying with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.